They called her Old Mattie in the break room and the liability in the boardroom. To Dr. Julian Sterling, the freshly minted 36-year-old chief of surgery at St. Jude's Memorial in Chicago, Matilda Vance was everything wrong with the American medical system. She was slow. She was 55 years old. She walked with a heavy, pronounced limp, favoring her right leg, and relied on a tarnished cane with a grip worn smooth by years of white-knuckled pressure. Worse, her hands shook, a resting tremor, faint but noticeable, that made the porcelain coffee cup rattle against its saucer whenever she sat in the nurse's station. She ruins the aesthetic, Sterling had complained to the hospital director just that morning. Sterling was a man of pristine appearances. Tailored scrubs, teeth whitened to a blinding ceramic shine, and a pedigree from Harvard Medical that he mentioned within 5 minutes of meeting anyone. "We are a level 1 trauma center, not a retirement home. How am I supposed to run a high-efficiency ER when I have a nurse who takes 10 seconds just to stand up?" "Matilda has tenure, Julian," the director had sighed. "She's been here since before you started med school. Just put her on inventory. Keep her out of the bays." So that was Mattie's life. Relegated to the supply closet, counting boxes of gauze and saline, listening to the younger nurses whisper about her sad existence. They didn't know why she limped. They assumed it was arthritis or a car accident. They didn't know why her hands shook. They assumed it was early-onset Parkinson's or the bottle. They had no idea that the shaking stopped the moment her heart rate hit 120 beats per minute. They didn't know that Matilda Vance was the only woman to have ever washed out of, and then forced her way back into, the classified Project Archangel pararescue program. They didn't know that the cane was a deception, and that the woman leaning on it was once the deadliest combat medic the Pentagon had ever denied existing. But the blizzard outside was howling, and the past was about to kick down the front doors. Chicago was vanishing. A bomb cyclone had buried the city under 3 feet of snow, turning Lakeshore Drive into a parking lot of abandoned vehicles. The wind screamed against the glass walls of the ER waiting room, a high-pitched keen that sounded like a dying animal. Inside, the air was hot, smelling of wet wool, stale coffee, and anxiety. Matilda sat on a stool near the triage desk, organizing patient files. Her leg was throbbing, a deep, metallic ache where a titanium rod had replaced her shattered femur. The barometric pressure drop was torture, but her face remained a mask of bored indifference. "Move, Matilda. You're blocking the flow." Dr. Sterling swept past her, flanked by 3 terrified residents. He didn't even look at her. He just gestured for her to vanish. "Sorry, doctor," Matilda said, her voice raspy, like dry leaves sliding over pavement. She shuffled her cane, stepping back. "Honestly," Sterling muttered, loud enough for the entire station to hear, "I don't know why HR is so terrified of a lawsuit. She's a safety hazard. If we get a real trauma tonight, she's going to trip over her own cane and kill someone." A young nurse, Elena, looked up from a computer. Elena was 22, kind, and the only one who made sure Matilda had fresh coffee. "She's just organizing the charts, Dr. Sterling. She's helping." "Helping would be retiring," Sterling snapped. "If the board won't fire her, I'll make her quit. Vance, go down to the sub-basement. I want a manual count of the ventilator filters. All of them." It was busy work. Punitive. The sub-basement was freezing and the elevator was broken. Matilda would have to take the stairs with her bad leg. Matilda met Sterling's eyes. His were brown, arrogant, and empty. Hers were gray, flat, and had seen things that would make Sterling weep in a fetal position. "Understood, doctor," she said softly. She turned to leave, the clack drag of her gait echoing in the sudden silence. Let him play king, Matilda thought. Civilians love their crowns. She was reaching for the stairwell door when the red phone at the central desk, a line reserved for disastrous mass casualty events, began to scream. "Code black. We have a code black inbound." The charge nurse, a stout woman named Brenda, went pale as she slammed the phone down. "Dr. Sterling, EMS says it's a high-speed convoy ambush. Multiple GSWs, gunshot wounds, Explosion trauma. They're 2 minutes out. Sterling spun around, his eyes lighting up. This was his stage. Trauma bays 1 through 4. Prep for surgery. Get the blood bank on the line. Ambush? In Chicago? Probably gang violence. Get security to lock down the entrance. Sir, Brenda stammered. It's not gangs. The call came from a secure channel. They said Viper Actual is compromised. Sterling waved a hand dismissively. I don't care if it's the Pope. Protocols remain the same. Prepare to cut. Matilda stopped. Her hand froze on the doorknob. Viper Actual. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. That wasn't a police code. That was a call sign she hadn't heard since the Kandahar extraction of 2011. Matilda! Sterling shouted, seeing her standing there. Get to the basement. I don't want you underfoot when the real work starts. Matilda ignored him. She turned around and walked back toward the intake doors. She didn't shuffle this time. The cane hit the floor with a rhythmic, driving force. Vance, are you deaf? Sterling roared, marching toward her. The automatic doors blew open. They didn't slide. They were forced apart by 2 men in black trench coats. Blood smeared across their faces. MP5 submachine guns held tight against their chests. Clear the room, one of them screamed. Nobody moves. Behind them, a gurney rattled in, pushed by frantic paramedics and 2 more armed guards. On the stretcher lay a man in a shredded tuxedo. He was older, perhaps 60, with silver hair matted by blood. His chest was a ruin of torn fabric and scorched flesh. Matilda recognized him instantly. Senator Marcus Thorne, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The man who had signed the order that sent her unit into the meat grinder of Syria, and the man who had personally pulled her from the wreckage when the extraction chopper went down. He's crashing, a paramedic yelled. BP-70 over 40. Massive shrapnel wound to the mediastinum. Sterling pushed past the armed guards, his ego overriding his survival instinct. I am the chief of trauma. Put those guns away or get out of my hospital. He's a federal asset. The lead agent barked, sweat dripping from his nose. Assassination attempt. Direct hit with an RPG. I don't care, Sterling said, snapping gloves on. Get him to Trauma 1. I need a thoracotomy tray. We're cracking his chest. The gurney flew past Matilda. She saw the wound. It was a jagged, ugly hole just above the heart. But something was wrong. The blood wasn't pulsing with the rhythm of a heartbeat. It was oozing, dark and thick. And there, protruding slightly from the sternum, was a shard of black glass. Not glass, obsidian polymer. Matilda's vision tunneled. She saw the blue veins pulsing around the wound. Not from trauma, but from a binary accelerant. Stop! The voice didn't sound like Matilda. It sounded like a sledgehammer hitting a steel plate. Sterling was already raising a scalpel to the senator's chest in Trauma 1. He froze, looking back at the door where Matilda stood, blocking the armed agents. Get her out of here, Sterling screamed. Security! Don't cut him. Matilda walked into the trauma bay, ignoring the guns pointed at her. That's not shrapnel, you idiot. It's a Widowmaker kinetic smart fuse. If you touch that with metal, or if you use electrocautery, it will detonate. The room went silent. The beeping of the monitor seemed to get louder. Sterling stared at her, then let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. A what? A smart fuse? You've been watching too much sci-fi, Granny. It's a piece of debris from the car. Look at the entry wound, Matilda said, her voice steady, the tremor in her hands completely gone. No powder burns. Clean entry. It was a targeted projectile. Look at the bruising, it's star-shaped. That's the anchoring mechanism. It hooks into the ribcage to stabilize the explosive core. It monitors his heartbeat. If his heart rate drops below 40, it blows. If you touch it with conductive metal, it completes the circuit and blows. She looked at the Secret Service agent. Tell him what hit the car. The agent looked terrified. We didn't see a rocket. It was a drone, a small suicide drone. It slammed into the windshield. A hunter-killer drone. Matilda nodded. Carrying a localized kinetic payload, designed to kill the target and the surgical team trying to save him. Sterling's face turned red. This is insane. I am not letting a senile inventory nurse dictate my surgery. Security. Remove her. 2 hospital security guards, burly men named Miller and Jones, stepped forward uncertainly. Ms. Vance, come on, Miller said gently. Don't make us drag you. Touch that patient with a scalpel. Sterling, Matilda said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. And you kill everyone on this floor. I am the chief of surgery. Sterling roared, spit flying. Get her out. Now. Miller grabbed Matilda's arm. It happened fast. Matilda didn't resist. She simply shifted her weight. She hooked the crook of her cane behind Miller's knee and twisted her hips. The 200-pound guard hit the floor with a thud that shook the room. Before Jones could react, Matilda drove the rubber tip of the cane into his solar plexus. Precise, controlled, non-lethal but paralyzing. He folded like a lawn chair. The Secret Service agents raised their weapons. Hold your fire, Matilda barked. The command carried such absolute authority that the agents hesitated. She reached into her scrub pocket. She didn't pull a weapon. She pulled out a small, antiquated flip phone. A burner. You're making a mistake, Sterling yelled, moving the scalpel toward the senator's chest again. I have to relieve the pressure. Matilda flipped the phone open. She dialed a number that didn't exist in the public directory. 1 ring. Authorization, a computerized voice said. Echo Sierra 4. Valkyrie actual. Authentication. Broken arrow. Silence. Then, a human voice. Deep. Urgent. Valkyrie? Jesus Christ, Maddie? We have you listed as Kia for 3 years. Not dead, Jack. Just retired, Matilda said, her eyes locked on Sterling. I have a VIP, Marcus Thorne. Compromised by a Widowmaker device. I have a hostile civilian surgeon attempting to breach the chest with standard instruments. I need immediate override and containment. Thorne is the asset? The voice on the phone swore. Hold position. Ghost Squadron is running a blizzard training op out of O'Hare. They are 4 minutes out. Do not let that doctor cut. You have 3 minutes, Jack, Matilda said. Or I'm going to have to hurt a civilian. She hung up and looked at the agents. My name is Master Sergeant Matilda Vance, formerly of the 24th Special Tactics Squadron. Stand down. You're insane, Sterling hissed. You're actually psychotic. He looked at the agents. Arrest her. She just assaulted staff. The lead agent, a man named Henderson, looked at the woman with the cane. He looked at the unconscious guards. He looked at the phone. He lowered his gun. Doctor, step away from the patient. What? Sterling gasped. Step away, Henderson yelled. His stats are dropping, the anesthesiologist shouted. Heart rate 45. Maddie said if it drops below 40, it blows, Matilda finished. She stepped forward, limping past the stunned Sterling. Give me a ceramic clamp, plastic forceps. Now. We don't keep ceramic tools in a standard tray, the scrub nurse cried. The dental lab, Matilda snapped. Run. Get the porcelain sculpting tools. Go. The nurse ran. This is malpractice. Sterling was hyperventilating. I am reporting this to the board. You are finished, Vance. THWOPTHWOPTHWOP. The sound wasn't wind. It was a rhythmic beating that vibrated the fillings in their teeth. The liquid in the 4 bags began to ripple. What is that? Sterling asked, looking at the ceiling. Outside, in the swirling white void of the blizzard, shadows materialized. They weren't standard medevac choppers. They were MH-60 Black Hawks modified for stealth, painted matte black. They didn't land. There was no room in the crowded parking lot. They hovered over the ambulance bay, their rotors tearing the snow into a vortex. Ropes dropped. Through the ER windows, the staff watched in horror and awe as figures in full tactical gear, quadnocular night vision goggles, exoskeletons, and heavy plating, fast roped down into the blizzard. The ER sliding doors didn't just open. They were breached. A canister rolled in flashbang, but low yield. Bang. Light blinded the lobby. When the spots cleared from Sterling's eyes, the room was filled with 12 operators. Their patches bore no unit insignia, just a gray ghost on a black field. "Secure the perimeter," the lead operator shouted. His voice was amplified by a helmet speaker. "Nobody in or out. Cut the Wi-Fi. Jam all cellular signals." The leader, a giant of a man with breaker stenciled on his vest, marched straight into Trauma 1. He ignored the agents. He ignored Sterling. He walked up to Matilda Vance, who was currently taking the senator's pulse with 2 fingers. The giant stopped. He flipped up his goggles. He was a colonel, scarred and terrifying. He looked at the frail, gray-haired woman with the cane. "Valkyrie," he breathed. "Breaker." Matilda nodded, not looking up. "You put on weight. They told us you were dead," the colonel said, his voice cracking slightly. "I got better. Now, unless you want to explain to the president why his favorite senator is a smear on the wall, get me a stabilization kit and tell this Ken doll to get out of my light." She pointed a thumb at Sterling. Sterling found his voice. "I am Dr. Julian Sterling. This is my hospital. Who do you think?" Colonel Breaker turned. He didn't yell. He just leaned down, his face inches from Sterling's. "Son, right now this room is United States soil. And that woman is the only reason you aren't currently breathing nerve gas. You are relieved." 2 operators grabbed Sterling by the arms and hauled him back against the wall. They didn't handcuff him, but the look in their eyes said that moving would be a fatal error. "I have the dental tools." The nurse, Elena, burst back in, breathless. She froze, seeing the room full of soldiers. "Here," Matilda said calmly. She took the tray. "Vitals, Maddie," Colonel Breaker said, moving to the monitor. "Heart rate 42. Is cutting it close." "We need to bypass the trigger," Matilda said. She picked up a white, ceramic sculpting hook. "I need you to stop his heart, Breaker," Sterling screamed from the wall. "You'll kill him. You can't just stop the heart without a bypass machine." "Adenosine," Matilda ordered. 6 milligrams. Rapid push. It'll stop the electrical impulse for about 10 seconds. "That's my window." 10 seconds to remove an anchored explosive? Sterling laughed hysterically. "Impossible. Human reaction time isn't that fast." Matilda looked at her hands. They were perfectly still. The adrenaline was flooding her system, waking up the dormant neural pathways of a Tier 1 operator. "Push it," she said. The medic injected the drug. The monitor whined. Beep. Flatline. The room held its breath. Matilda moved. She didn't look like an old woman anymore. She moved with a terrifying, fluid speed. She inserted the ceramic hook into the wound, bypassing the sensor wire. She felt the barb hooked into the sternum. Crunch. She twisted her wrist, breaking the bone anchor. 5 seconds. Breaker counted. She slid the forceps in. The black shard was slippery with blood. If it touched the retractor. 3 seconds. Matilda closed her eyes for a microsecond, visualizing the mechanism she had studied in diagrams years ago. She pulled. Not straight out, but a corkscrew motion to avoid the trigger wire. 1 second. She ripped the device free and threw it into the lead line box Breaker was holding open. "Box!" she yelled. Breaker slammed the lid shut and threw his body over it. Thud. A muffled detonation shook the heavy box. Even through the lead lining, the force was enough to bruise Breaker's ribs. If that had been in the open air, the shrapnel would have shredded everyone. "Restart him," Matilda yelled. "Epinephrine." Pacing. The medic hit the senator with the pads. Thump. Nothing. "Come on, Marcus," Matilda whispered, grabbing the senator's heart through the open chest cavity. She hadn't fully opened him, but she pressed on the sternum. "Don't you die on me. Not after I walked out of retirement for you." Beep, beep, beep. Sinus rhythm, the anesthesiologist gasped. "BP stabilizing. 110/70. Matilda exhaled. She slumped against the table, the adrenaline crash hitting her like a freight train. Her hands started to shake again. She reached for her cane. "Secure the package," Breaker ordered his team. "Get the chopper ready for transport. We're taking him to Walter Reed." Sterling slid down the wall to the floor. He looked at the lead box. He looked at the monitor showing a living patient. He looked at the crippled nurse wiping blood off her ceramic tool. "Who are you?" Sterling whispered. The storm had broken by morning. The sun was shining off the fresh snow, blindingly bright. Senator Thorne was stable, prepped for transport in the hospital helipad. The black helicopters were still there, terrifying and majestic against the Chicago skyline. In the director's office, the mood was funereal. Dr. Sterling sat in a chair, looking like a man who had just survived a firing squad. The hospital director was pale. Colonel Breaker stood by the window. He threw a thick file onto the desk. It landed with a heavy thud. "Top secret/SCI, Breaker said. "Read it." Sterling opened the folder. His hands trembled. "Matilda Vance, redacted. Rank, Master Chief Special Warfare Operator, J.G. Unit, JMAU, Joint Medical Augmentation Unit, /Task Force 121. Awards: Navy Cross, Silver Star, X2, Purple Heart, X3. Sterling flipped the page. There was a photo. A younger Matilda, geared up, rappelling out of a helicopter, an assault rifle on her back and a medkit on her chest. She was the lead medical operator for the Ghost Squadron, Breaker said, his voice cold. In 2011, her bird was shot down over Syria. She broke her femur, 3 ribs, and suffered a concussion. She dragged Senator Thorne, then General Thorne, 6 miles through hostile territory. She kept him alive for 2 days with a sucking chest wound, fighting off insurgents with a pistol while unable to walk. Breaker leaned over the desk. "That limp you mocked? That's the price she paid for carrying a man twice her size to safety. That tremor? Nerve damage from the interrogation she endured so the extraction team could find them." Sterling felt sick. He felt small. I didn't know." "Because you didn't look," Breaker said. "You saw a uniform and a cane. You didn't see the soldier." The door opened. Matilda walked in. She was back in her oversized scrubs, holding her cane. She looked tired. "The senator wants to see you, Julian," she said. Sterling looked up, startled. "Me? He wants to thank the team that saved him," Matilda said, her face unreadable. "I told him you assisted with the thoracotomy." "Why?" Sterling stammered. "I tried to have you arrested. I almost killed him." "Because," Matilda said, leaning on her cane, "he needs to believe he was safe, and because I don't do this for the credit. I do it because it's the job." She turned to leave. "But, doctor, if you ever treat a nurse, or a janitor or a patient like dirt again, Breaker has your home address." The departure was a spectacle. Every employee of St. Jude's Memorial was lined up outside the emergency bay. Doctors, nurses, orderlies, cooks. The rumors had spread like wildfire. The Ghost Squad was leaving, and they were taking the senator. Senator Thorne was wheeled out on a stretcher, flanked by the elite operators. He looked weak, but he was awake. He signaled for them to stop near the line of staff. "Where is she?" Thorne rasped. Matilda stood in the back, behind a row of residents. She was trying to be invisible. "Valkyrie!" Thorne shouted. It was a command. Matilda sighed and stepped forward. Clack drag, clack drag. She stopped in front of the stretcher. "You got old, Marcus," she smiled. "And you're still a pain in my ass." Thorne grinned weakly. "Come back to the Pentagon, Maddie. We have a desk for you. Instructor position. Name your salary." Matilda looked at the sleek black helicopter. She looked at Colonel Breaker, who nodded at her with hope in his eyes. It was a ticket out, a return to glory, respect. Then she looked at Elena, the young nurse, who was looking at her with hero worship. She looked at the chaotic, messy ER behind her. "No thanks, sir," Matilda said. "My fighting days are done. Besides, someone has to teach these kids how to start in 4 without passing out." Thorne laughed. He held out his hand. Matilda took it. "Form up," Breaker shouted. The 12 operators of Ghost Squadron, men who toppled regimes and hunted terrorists, snapped to attention. They turned toward the small, limping woman in blue scrubs. "Present. Arms." 12 gloved hands snapped to their brows in a crisp salute. It was a gesture reserved for heads of state and fallen heroes. The hospital staff gasped. Matilda Vance straightened her spine. For a moment the years fell away. The pain in her leg vanished. She stood 5'10", steel and fire. She raised her trembling hand and returned the salute. Sharp. Perfect. "At ease, boys," she said. "Get out of my driveway. You're blocking the ambulances." The helicopters lifted off, vanishing into the blue sky. The noise faded. Dr. Sterling stood by the automatic doors. He watched Matilda walk back toward the entrance. "Matilda," he called out. She stopped. "Inventory is done," he said, his voice awkward. I think we need you in triage. Your diagnostic skills are adequate." It was the closest thing to an apology his ego would allow. Matilda smirked. "Adequate. I'll take it. Can I carry that box for you?" Sterling pointed to a heavy crate of saline she was eyeing. "I got it, doctor," Matilda said, hooking it with her free arm. "You just worry about your cuticles." She walked back into the ER, the clack drag of her cane sounding like a heartbeat. The phone at the desk rang. Matilda picked it up. "St. Jude's Emergency, Nurse Vance speaking. How can I help you?" She was just a nurse again, and that was exactly enough.